Hi, welcome to The Mindset. This is episode 17. I'm your host, Christopher Feltner, training architect with Ucaro Systems. And with me, I have Marta Finnegan, all the way from Andersonville, Tennessee. So, are you all getting the crazy heat wave that we are here?
Yes, we are, which is very challenging because we spend a lot of time outside and we
Right?
have to kind of break it up and bring the kids inside for a cool down and then rotate them back out. So,
Wow. Yeah, and you're having a field day outside or something like that, right?
yes,
Woo.
a water field day. So, hopefully, we can keep the kids cool enough with the
Well,
water slides.
I was about to say the water. That's the right way to go. Yeah, it's been in the mid to high 90s since last week.
Yeah, we've been low 90s, but our heat index has been like 97, 98. So,
Yeah, yeah. I thought I'd escaped all of this when we were in outside of Phoenix a couple weeks ago.
right.
Of course, they tell you the same thing. Oh, it's a dry heat. I'm like, nah, it's just heat. It's all just heat.
It is. It is.
So, if you would give us a little background about yourself and also about Norris Academy.
Okay. So I am a licensed therapist, LPC-MHSP in the state of Tennessee. I have worked at Norris Academy since 2019. I came over here as clinical director of the program, and then recently, I believe it was March, was promoted to program director. So we at Norris Academy is a PRTF psychiatric residential treatment facility, and we work with children with autism and intellectual disabilities. We take ages 6 to 17, and we work on, you know, ADLs, social skills, managing their emotions, things like that. So,
Gotcha. So, I remember when we first came there, there's a lot of changes going on, and um, so you started back in 2019 before we even came and did the initial training. So, what are some of the main differences you've seen working there pre and post Ukaru? Like, what have been some changes?
well, we've seen a significant decrease in restraints through the use of the UCARES system. I think staff feels safer when a child escalates because at least there's a
Mm-hmm.
pad between them and the child. So I feel like it definitely decreased our workers' comp claims. But I think overall, it's just been a shift in culture of having a better understanding of the trauma informed approach and how restraints aren't good for anybody. Sometimes you might end up having to do them, but if we can avoid them, we absolutely attempt to do so.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to get into some of the numbers because you all have some amazing numbers in your reduction. But something I want to ask about is, I know when we kind of give our own background when we're first training places or places that are interested in adopting Ukaru, we give what our data used to look like in '03 up to where it is now. And a common question is, well, you're probably taking easier individuals now. So what about if someone said that to you, like all Norris must be taking easier kids now? How would you respond to that?
That is definitely not accurate. We have our own unique challenges with the population we work with. One of the things that we see is just a significant amount of impulsivity.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes our kids become aggressive because they can't communicate their needs because they're non-speaking, or
Mm-hmm.
just difficulty when they're dysregulated. They might have some difficulty just getting the words out, and so we definitely still have aggression. We definitely still have our regular challenges, but I think the big difference is that change in mindset and really understanding how trauma impacts the brain.
Mm-hmm. So talking about your restraints, what have been some of the reductions and changes you've seen from the beginning to now?
If we could cut it by 50%, I would have been thrilled.
Yeah.
And so that was my hope, was to cut it by 50%. But we have not seen over 100 restraints for a year since that first year when we were trained. Most of
Oh
the
wow.
time it's 80 or below.
So as you've made progress with the reduction and restraint use, Have you all shared that data openly with the staff?
Yes. So we made a point of every month, like after the first year,
Hmm.
um, then in 2021, we have monthly staff meetings. And so we would do an announcement of, hey, we had 0 restraints this month, or we only had 2 restraints. Let's keep trying for a month of 0 restraints. And so people got excited about it. We to incentivize having uh, the use of UCARO, making sure that staff were really engaging in it. We
Hmm.
gave them a challenge of if we can go 30 days without any restraints, then we'll have a party. So we had a big party when we finally hit that 0 restraint month. But we've gone before 4 months in a row without any restraints. So our staff really got engaged with it.
Gotcha. And then what about the individuals you served? Did they get involved also with trying to reach that goal in any way? Or?
Yes, yes. So we definitely try to incentivize them as well, encourage
Hmm.
them, reminding them they need to encourage each other. Uh,
Hmm.
so it's a team effort for all of us. And we also really try hard to make the pads a friendly situation for them.
Hmm.
So, for instance, we have group setting, like group therapy sessions where we will have the kids paint one of the pads. So each kid will get a
Yeah.
pad and they'll paint something, maybe what they're feeling at that time, some sort of representation of where they want to be, things like that. And so
Hmm.
it's really made it a friendly environment for them. It is not uncommon to walk through our halls and see a child napping on one of the pads. They like the pads a lot. So
So when you had like a sudden spike due to, new admissions and their behaviors at first, sometimes that can discourage a place where it's like, oh, maybe it's not sustainable. Maybe we need to go back to more stringent practices to regain some sense of control. Like, how did you go about resisting that, or did you have mindset like that?
Um, I don't know if I would say necessarily a mindset of needing to regain control through the use of restraints, but I
Hmm.
do think just we would do a continual reminder of the importance of UCARU using the
Gotcha.
pads. And so we would remind staff during the all staff meetings. We had supervisors on the floor just encouraging them to use it. Anytime we do have a restraint, we do not an investigation. We do a review of it, watching the
Hmm.
footage to see what we could do differently. So if we see a staff not using pads, then we always remind them, hey, don't forget, grab a
Hmm.
pad. We need to try to use that first. And so I think through the review process and just the continual reminders, then we are typically able to kind of stay on track.
Gotcha. So you mentioned, some of the incentivizing with the staff around, you had the party if they could go a month without. What have been some other, creative ways that you incentivize staff and the individuals?
Well, we have had we did a t-shirt contest and kind of broke them up into teams.
Hmm.
To encourage the use of safety and trauma informed approach. We've done raffles before, and just always trying to encourage the staff. And sometimes when they've had a rough day, because
Hmm.
some days are obviously rougher than others, we try to
Yeah.
acknowledge that, hey, it's been a challenging day. So we might order pizza for the staff just as a thank you for just sticking with it and trying
Hmm.
so hard. So.
Nice. And then what about in terms of turnover? Have you seen any impact there?
I mean, with our population, we have turnover. There's
Sure, sure.
no way around that. But I do think that there's been some improvement. I think our biggest challenge is due to having both speaking and non-speaking children in
Hmm.
our particular population. It's getting staff through the first 90 days
Gotcha.
because it's trying to help them develop that relationship. Once you have the relationship with the children, the job gets much easier, obviously.
Yeah.
But that first 90 days is crucial. And I do think that we have decreased the number of staff leaving in the first 90 days.
Gotcha. In the case study, you mentioned staff feeling empowered to work through challenging situations without feeling the need to go hands on. What are some of the ways that you all achieve that?
Well, so it is not uncommon to see staff. I mean, once they're using the pads and everything, but once the
Hmm.
child calms down, you'll see a staff just sitting in the hallway talking through things with the child. If a child's refusing to transition, they will just sit and wait it out. We
Gotcha.
also will see, again, the relationship has been a huge piece of it, but just a
Hmm.
lot more relationship building, a lot more talking through it with the child. And so there's been a lot of improvement on their therapeutic relationships with the kids as a result.
Good. Something I was excited to hear you talk about in the case study as well is the training, holding carry training for family members.
Yes.
Because it's something that, when we certify trainers, we talk about part of their license is they can hold trainings for family members, guardians, but you can't charge them, for currently enrolled folks. Um, but there's always a feel like some places are like, oh, that'd be great. But then there's a lot of hesitancy of, oh, I don't know if we'd want to do that.
Right.
Like what made you all decide to do it, and what have been some of the benefits or maybe even any drawbacks from it?
So we've had parents when we first started using UCARO, parents are struggling with the idea of bringing, because our children still will have some instances of aggression when they discharge. They're not going to leave here cured of autism or
Mm-hmm.
intellectual disabilities. They still have behaviors. Our goal is to decrease the behaviors to the point where they can function in a community setting.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the parents get very anxious about coming home and how do we handle it when they become aggressive. And so, we go over all the different techniques that we use, but then we said, well, we also use Ucaru, and then parents started having an interest in it. And so we started doing kind of once a quarter. If we can get enough families in here, we try to get like 4 or 5. And so we'll do a weekend training. And it's one of our therapists is trained as a trainer. And so he will come out and he'll do the training with them, and it gives the families a lot more confidence on how to handle things when they bring their child home. I haven't really seen a lot of negatives to it, but the family feels much more comfortable knowing
Mm-hmm.
they have some additional tools that they can use.
Well, yeah, because I feel like you have a child with a certain challenge, diagnoses, and I feel like a lot of times families are given very surface information about what the diagnosis is, but not necessarily any tools for what does that mean, me trying to raise this child, be
Right.
a part of their life, the relationship. And I think that a lot of times families do find a lot of utility. Even, some go through all of it where it's the physical skills as well, but some just really get a lot out of the conceptual piece, especially around trauma in the brain and some of those things. Um, so that's great that you all have incorporated that. What would you say has been the most challenging piece across your whole implementation? Like what were some of the most challenging parts?
I think to start with, it was just getting staff to pick up the pads.
Mm-hmm.
um, we we had limited pads when we first started Yukeru. So we were kind of having to shuffle pads from location to location. It took us a while to build up to the amount of pads we really needed. So,
Mm-hmm.
but we wanted to start it as soon as possible and really get the ball rolling with trying to decrease our restraints and taking a more trauma informed approach. So I think the first challenge was just having enough pads.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had a limited number of pads, the children would take all the pads and take naps on them, and then the staff would not have pads to use if a
Mm-hmm.
child escalated. So that's no longer an issue for us. But I think the other piece was just changing the culture and changing the mindset of the staff.
Mm-hmm.
And so challenging the staff, reminding them of how traumatic a restraint is for everybody. It's not
Yeah.
just the child either. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we've had staff go home and have a difficult time sleeping at night, just thinking about the
Yep.
restraints, what they could have done differently. And so this gave staff additional tools they could use. But there was still a challenge of just making that shift.
Gotcha. Talking about a change in mindset, and as you know, a big piece of what we teach is philosophy of comfort versus control, right? What does that mean to you? So, how would you, like, if you met me at a restaurant and I saw your shirt for Norris Academy and I heard something about Ukeru, and I'm like, what's that comfort versus control stuff I've heard about? How would you explain that to me?
I would explain it as we don't have to be in control of every situation, and engaging in the power struggles just because I said so,
Mm-hmm.
versus making sure we're giving the child what they need. I think every power struggle is an unmet need, that
Mm-hmm.
they may not be able to vocalize what that need is, but they're needing something at that moment. And it takes two people to engage in that power struggle. And
Mm-hmm.
so, certainly there are things that we have to do to keep a child safe,
Sure.
but there's so many things that there's no reason to say no to. There's no reason to fight over it. There's no reason to argue with the children. Or even, for instance, just something as simple as the pads. When we had
Mm-hmm.
enough pads, there wasn't the issue of, oh, I've got to keep this pad. I can't let the child grab it. We just let the
Gotcha.
child grab it and
Gotcha.
then run backwards till we get another pad. Staff will be tossing pads to one another, but fighting over a pad, and even that was a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of a challenge in changing that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Do we still fall into the trap of power struggles? Of course, I think everyone will at some point or another, and a lot of times staff will be like, midway they'll realize, what am I doing? I'm this is not worth the battle. So,
Mm-hmm.
and so giving the kids the comfort they need, but really talking to the children and trying to get to the core of what is bothering them.
Yeah. And then what about in terms of, because we've talked a lot about changes in comfort versus control and how we interact with the folks that we serve. Have you seen any differences in terms of how staff interact with each other?
I think the biggest thing is a tremendous amount of teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we review the occasional restraints that we do have, the
Mm-hmm.
first thing that comes out of our mouth is there's some really good teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
Staff are backing each other up. Staff are tossing pads to one another. Staff are engaging with one another and trying to make sure that they're keeping each other safe too.
Mm-hmm.
So the teamwork drastically improved, through the use of and the training of UCARU.
Gotcha. I've been thinking a lot about residential settings and special education a lot lately with so much press that's around, and there've been some documentaries, and I think like it's kind of like a mainstream demonization of anything residential or special education based in a lot of ways. What are some things, if I was someone that has that mindset and I was talking to you, I'm like, oh, you're a program director of a facility like that. What would be some of the myths that you would feel like should be debunked?
Well, I think one of the important things is to realize this isn't a prison.
Mm-hmm.
This is treatment. This is a psychiatric facility. Our goal is never to dope the children up on medications. We try
Mm-hmm.
to discharge. Most often, they discharge on less medications than they come in on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about finding the right medications, finding the right skills to teach them so that they can be more successful. I think really stressing that this is just a temporary placement. This is not, they're not supposed to live here. This isn't their home. We don't want them to feel so comfortable that they view this as home. And that
Mm-hmm.
we really do try to we don't restrict them from families. We do 2 video calls a week with their families or guardians or whoever's on their call list. We really push for in-person visits. So we have a whole system of trying to transition them back home. And those are an important part of the treatment process, is
Mm-hmm.
really engaging with the family. I know some of those documentaries and things, they were trying to cut them off from the family, and we are very different from that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not helpful. That's part of their treatment, is they're going to be
Right.
returning to their family. The
Right.
family needs to be a big part of the treatment. So we do family therapy. We try to do those as video sessions. We want the children to stay engaged with their family and loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
We take the children out into the community. That's really important as well. And so we try to do we try to give our children a lot of opportunities that maybe they
Hmm.
wouldn't have normally. So we try to think really outside of the box. So we had a prom here, and we got
We did too, actually, just recently.
all right,
Yeah.
yeah. So we got formal dresses and suits donated to us,
Yeah.
and so the children got to dress up. We had music, a dance, and it was really neat. And then we did a VIP section for the kids that really worked the hardest over that course of that month. And so they had a little VIP section with little goodie bags. And then at the
Hmm.
end of the dance, they got to go for a limo ride.
Oh,
So it was
nice.
a really neat opportunity to expose our kids to different things. And it just felt like a really special, they felt very special.
Hmm.
They were just loved dressing up. And it was a really neat event. And so we try to do 2 formals a year. We do, as you mentioned at the beginning, field day. So we have
Hmm.
the big inflatable water slides and inflatable slip-in slides. We have cotton candy machines. So once a month, we try to do some sort of big special event for the kids because we don't want them to feel institutionalized. We don't want
Right.
them, we want them to continue to experience the things that other children their ages get to experience, even if
Yeah.
it's in a facility.
Right. And just get the opportunity to be kids.
Right.
Right. So many of them haven't had that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, what about, because I've ran into plenty of people like this, what I've talked to in public, and they hear about where I work and things, and they'll say, well, those kids just need some discipline. And usually they don't say it that nicely. Like, how would you respond to those types of folks?
I think a lot of these children end up here because the parents don't know how to handle them. No, don't know how to work with their children.
Hmm.
Kids don't come with an instruction manual, and so some of our kids have had harsher punishments previously, and they still end up here.
Hmm.
But our kids are still kids, and they still
Right.
need protection and attention, and especially with our population that can't speak.
Hmm.
The challenges around that and trying to help them better communicate. It's not about punishment. And sometimes we have parents who are like, well, what do you do when they misbehave? Well, we don't punish them. We don't lock them in their rooms. We don't do anything like
Hmm.
that. We talk through it with them and try to
Hmm.
figure out what is all behaviors have functions,
Hmm.
all behaviors have purposes,
Yep.
and why are they behaving this way so that we can fix the root problem.
Nice. So, how long have you been in this field, would you say?
I have been working with children since 2011, but prior to that, I was working with adults. So I've
Gotcha.
been in the counseling field, I would say, since 2005, but
So,
working with children since 2011.
Gotcha. So, what has kept you in this field? Because, so many, there's a lot of burnout in our field.
right.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is what it is. It's difficult work. What has kept you in it for the long term?
So I actually left a facility I was working at with kids to do private practice.
Hmm.
And I missed the kids. I missed watching those day-to-day aha moments. Those,
Hmm.
in outpatient settings, you don't get to see those those small moments of success.
Hmm.
They just come in and tell you about it after the fact. But in residential treatment, you actually get to be there when they figure out how to use a utensil or they
Hmm.
start speaking more. And it's just amazing. And we have the most amazing kids. I absolutely adore them. They're precious. People think I'm crazy sometimes for some of the working somewhere that has some of the behaviors that we have.
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
but it's not about looking at the child. The child is not their behaviors.
Right.
The behaviors are just a function of other issues. And so just to be able to see the progress the kids make is just amazing. So,
Nice. So, for anyone around your service area, if they want to find more information, maybe they have family members that could use the extra support. What's the easiest ways for them to find more information about Norris Academy?
they could go to our website, or they can just call, and our admissions team will send brochures, pamphlets, or answer any questions they may have.
All right. Well, perfect. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me here this morning.
Thank you so much.
All right. This has been the Mindset episode 17. We'll catch you next time.